right, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to Performance Analytics and the Reporting Office Hours. We are very glad that you're able to join us for this session. And we do this session every 2 weeks, just about. And for those of you who are new, welcome. And for those of you who have joined us before, welcome back. My name is David Van Houston, and I work for the ServiceNow Intelligence, Analytics, and Reporting team. And I'm joined here today with Adam Stout and Thomas Davis. And together we formed a team that will be guiding you through this office hours. We will be doing a short presentation, and at the end, we'll answer a lot of questions. Before we get started though, I'm going to run through a few logistical items for today's session. Number one, this session is for you. This is your opportunity to get some fresh ideas, gain a better understanding of performance analytics, reporting, or everything around it, and get some practical advice from some of the world's experts in the field. There may be cases where we can't solve a technical issue, or we get into details about your instance, so we may ask you to open a case on high, or we may need to follow up offline so that we can cover as many questions as possible during this session. Please feel free to ask questions via Zoom's Q&A panel. So make a note that you search for it in the interface and ask the questions there so that we can answer the questions and make sure that we create a history of answers and then be able to publish that online so to help the rest of the community. Or if you can't find it or find it difficult to use the text chat to converse with us or ask us for help. We may ask follow-up questions to clarify so we can ensure we're answering everything appropriately. So please make them as concise and elaborate as possible. We do have many people on the line, so please keep yourself on mute unless you want to ask a question via the phone. Regardless, please note that this session is being recorded. So if you or your organization is not comfortable with that, please disconnect now. All the sessions are posted to YouTube, and the link of the playlist is on the page where you registered for this session. As the presentation for today, we have Adam Stout giving us some in-depth information on conquering challenging reports using the Now platform. And then following his presentation, we'll open up the floor for your questions. So Adam, having said that, please start your presentation.
Thanks, David. All right, so as David mentioned, today we're talking about conquering some of the reporting challenges that we hear. This presentation is directly addressing a few questions that we've seen over time, some that have come up as recently as this morning. And I wanted to walk through a couple of use cases about how you can really leverage the platform to solve your reporting questions. So the first thing that we want to talk about is what is reporting, what is performance analytics, where our challenges come from. And one of the big things that I want you to take away from this session is that analytics are part of the platform. They're not separate. We're not a third-party tool that plugs into ServiceNow, but we are part of ServiceNow. And what that means is that we are performance analytics, reporting, the metrics subsystem, application development, and even the process that you're following. All of that comes together to solve your analytic needs. A common downfall we see comes from a kind of a traditional view of this, where analytics are separate. If you are ever in a situation where I must use reporting, or I must use performance analytics, or I need to use custom app development, that often doesn't work out well. So whatever the problem is that we're trying to solve, we need to be open to using all the tools that we have available on the platform, which again is PA, reporting, metrics, application development, and then always, sometimes we have to change our process. That's always has to be an option that we have available to us to get the desired outcome. Today, we're going to focus on application development. This is a little underutilized. So we're going to talk about some specific use cases where we would use application development and minor application development. We're going to do it all live in the next couple minutes, but we're going to use application development to augment what we need to do for reporting and for performance analytics. Okay, the next key part about this is that what we see often, and you probably have seen this slide before, is that in a really traditional view, what we see when we come into a company for the first time is that we see our admins talk to the developers. That's good, right? This is still generally healthy. The developers talk to the service owners. The service owners talk to the analytics developers, but we don't see a great connection between all four of these stakeholders. Depending on the size of the company, these might actually all be one person. Generally, the bigger we get, the bigger these teams are, the more separated they are. To be really successful with ServiceNow, we need to all work together. It is a team sport, and the use cases we're going to go through today kind of exemplify that. So whether it's creating a new database view, defining a metric, changing a process, or just creating a dashboard, we all have to agree who's going to do what, and be able to share some responsibility, right? If I need a new database view, who is going to do that? The answer can't be the app developers only, and only if they need it, right? The analytic developers might identify a use case where we need a new view, we need a new field, and you need to have a really tight working relationship with the rest of the team so that we can agree, yes, this is what we need to do, and let's get it done quickly. Nobody wants to be in a situation where I need a new field, the app developers are the only ones that can do it, and they don't prioritize my needs. So I have to wait 6 months for a field, and now I have to come up with a subpar solution because we aren't doing the right thing. So again, let's walk through a couple of use cases about where application development is the right thing for our reporting. And as we go through this, I could rant about this for 20 minutes or an hour or 2 hours, and some of you have heard that before, but it is important that we address the root cause of what we want to have. A lot of us come from a data analytics background, and I know I was taught, you can't fix the operational system, right? We have to insulate ourselves with ETL. That doesn't work, and it doesn't make any sense. If something is so important that we need to report on it, that I need to have this on a CIO dashboard, I need to have this on a CEO dashboard, why on earth would I not use that field everywhere in the platform, right? So that's, if I use a performance analytics script, then yeah, I have my field, I get my PA analytic correct, my KPIs right, but I can't use it in reporting, can't use it in interactive filters, can't use it in business rules, UI policies, workflows, all of these things, I'm just stealing value away from by using a performance analytics script or coming up with some other interesting solution. We want to solve the problem for important fields. We want to solve the problem in the tool itself. And that's what we're going to do today, where we're actually going to take some analytics and build it into the application so that we can use these analytics in workflows, in machine learning, in virtual agent, that everything it can do. If you click on the link that's here, if you search for it, there's a blog on this that talks about this in more detail. But it is important to understand that if you just hold something for reporting, if I do it in a Power BI, a case statement in SQL, if I do it in Power BI, do it in Tableau, you are stealing value away from the platform and what you can provide to your customers, to your users. All right, that's enough of the rant. Let's get into some details. So we're going to talk about 3 use cases that we see a lot. These are I've seen many variations of these, but these are kind of simple use cases that are very common. So we're going to talk about how do I report on the latest status report, the latest of something. How do I report on prefixes? So I see a lot of naming standards, whether it's an incidents or problems or stories, see a lot in stories. We're going to talk about how would I report on these, the kind of the naming conventions and prefixes. And then how do I report on lists? You can report on lists today, but it's not exactly what you want necessarily. Generally don't want to report on lists, but if we need to, we're going to talk about how you do that and how you can make it really functional for you. Okay, so the first thing is the latest status reports. Reporting, this is effectively reporting as a reference field, as a child table, as a one-to-one. So the use case here is I have a project, PM project, and I have status reports. Status reports come in every week for this project, and I want to report on the latest status. You can go to today, you can do it a couple different ways. You can go to the status report table and walk up to project, and you kind of get what you want, but you can't pick one, right? It's difficult to do. So maybe I'll do all the status reports submitted this week, but then what if somebody submitted it early, or it can get really complicated as to what I want to get. And I just want the latest one, whether that was from today, last week, or didn't exist. We also see the missing status report using a related list condition. But let's talk about how I can solve all of those in one fell swoop. So the use case, a couple of things that I often want to report on is a missing status report. if I do missing status report, I can do that today with the related list condition, but that is a separate report from what I want to see. But I want to see missing status reports. I want to see old status reports. So somebody submitted one, it's not missing, but it's over 2 weeks old. And then also one thing I want to see is on the project, I want to dot walk in fields from the latest status report. So on the status report field, we have an overall health score, overall status. So I want to see my projects and include the latest overall status. So every week as my users are submitting their status reports, I can just run my report on project and I can see what the latest status report is. I can see when it was submitted, who submitted it. They can get the summary of the overall status and whatever fields I want from that latest status report, I can dot walk into the project. So I'm taking that one-to-many and making it a one-to-one. Very similar use cases if I'm reporting on child tasks. So I have incidents and I want to report on the number, or let's say changes. I don't want to look at the change tasks, service catalog tasks, the problem tasks underneath it. And I just want something simple, like I want the number of tasks, the number of open tasks, closed tasks, pending tasks, or I want to get a current child task. We'll see this as well, where I might have 6 tasks that need to be done and I want to report on the current one. Especially in that use case, you have to be able to programmatically detect which one of the many you want to choose. So if I have 6 tasks, which one is it? Status reports, this is pretty easy. I want the latest one. It's really simple logic, but you do have to have logic that picks one. So this doesn't handle every use case, but if you can identify of these one-to-many things, this is the one I want, then this will work out well. So what we're going to do, and we'll do this in just a moment, is we're going to create a new field on the status field. I call it latest status report. I'm not very creative. So on project, I add a new field. I'm going to add a business rule to the child table, which is project status. That is the status report table. And when that changes and it's inserted or changes, it reevaluates for the parent project what the latest status report is. And then the third piece of this is I'm going to run a fix script to fix the old data. Really important, not just to fix things forward, but to make sure you run a fix script to set what's in there. And so I'm going to put my money where my mouth is and do this live on a system. And we are going to share. I'm going to share an instance where I have done none of this. And I'm hoping that my project table is here for us to view. So I have a project table, and what I want to see here are my status reports. And David, if you can let me know if I'm not sharing projects and project status reports, I'd appreciate it.
You are sharing.
All right, thank you. Okay, and so I have my projects, I have my project status. So I have all my status reports with my overall health. Again, I'm using project because this is one that gets asked quite a bit, but you could do the same thing in other use cases as well. So I'm going to come in to my project because that's where I want to have this latest status report. I'm going to go to my table. We're going to add the field. And so I'm quickly just going to come in and add latest status report, which is a reference to project status to project status. Done. And now I go back to my projects. I want to view the data, so I'm going to go to latest status report. Empty, everything's empty, which is expected because we haven't done anything. We haven't populated anything. So now I'm going to come to my project status report, and I am going to add a business rule. And we're going to create a new business rule. And this business rule, hopefully everybody's taken ServiceNow fundamentals, which I believe is now available and now learning as a self-paced class. But we're going to add a new business rule, which runs, we're going to tell it when to run, but we're going to set latest status. I'm going to come in, this is advanced. I want this to reevaluate when we insert, update, or delete. If I delete a status report, it needs to clear it out. If I add a new status report or I update a status report, I want it to set the latest status report. But I don't need it to run if I change the project manager. I only need it to run if I change the project itself somehow on the status report. I don't know if you do that, but if we'll detect that, because that needs to remove it from the old project, add it to the new one. Or if the status date changes, that's the week the status report is from. So based on the based on this is how we determine the latest. This is important because it's not just the latest one submitted, but the latest status, because I might submit one for this week and then go, oh, I forgot to do one for last week. Submit last week's this week. We want to make sure that that doesn't overwrite the one that I did. So what I'm saying here is that I want this to be after we submit the status report. If the project or the status date changed, we want to run this. And what we're going to run, I am cheating because I wrote this ahead of time. We're going to run this script. And what this script does, just very quickly, is that I have a function that says for a given project, sort by the status date, which is the field physically is called as on, and give me the latest one. And if there is no latest one, return false. Otherwise, return the latest status report. And then all we do is on the project, update the status report. One of the things I'm doing here is turning off workflows. I'm turning off audit. I'm turning off the sysupdate fields. When this happens, it just changes it on the project. When you're doing this, you have to decide whether that's appropriate or not. In this case, I think it is, but that's up to you in terms of auditing. Should submitting a status report count as updating the project or not? In this case, I'm saying it doesn't. You have the options to do that. And then I have a message saying I've set it. The other important thing here in the business rule is I have before and after when it changes. So if I'm changing the project, again, I might need to remove it from one to the other. I'm going to save this. And now what I'm able to do, we're going to go into one of my active projects. And in my active project, I actually meant to set this as read only. I forgot to do that. So I would set this as read only. It automatically added this to the form for me. I might decide where I want to put it. And now I'm going to go to status reports. I'm going to add a new status report. For today, everything looks good. Looks good. We're going to say that and we'll say it's green. And we will submit this. And now if I go back to my project, that should have set that, which it doesn't look like it did. Let's go to my projects. That should have set that, and I'm not going to debug it right now. But we'll go on to the next part of this, which is I'm going to go to my fix scripts. Hopefully my fix script works correctly. Sorry, I am going to check one thing on my projects to make sure I have the right table or the right field name. I'm going to fix my business rule because I had a typo in it. So I'm going back to my business rule for latest status. Update it. Excuse me. And we're going to go to status reports. I'm just gonna create a new status report. Or not. Here we're going to come in and do a new status report. This one is, we're going to say this is yellow, not so good, and submit it. Or it won't like what I'm doing, but it looks like it should have worked. Yes, so now it has set my latest status report. So typos do matter. And now what I want to do is go back and we're going to go back to my project list. We're going to see that I have one latest status report here, but I'm going to go back into my fix scripts and I want to set all the existing ones. So again, really important that when you create something new that you have a plan for the existing data. So I'm going to go to new fix scripts. Name, we should put a description in. We're going to skip that. I'm going to save this and then run it. Normally I'd run this in the background, but this should be quick. So I'm going to just run it in the foreground so we know when it's done. Okay, and it found a bunch of status reports, set all those in. And so now if I go back to projects, including this one, that set it. And now I have all my projects. Not everything has a status report, but for the ones that do, I now have my latest status report set up. By having this here, this lets me do a lot more. So I can come in and do reporting based on this dot walk, or I can even come in and I'm going to configure the list layout. And I can go to latest status report. And now I have all the fields from the latest status report available here. So I can come in and do last week's achievements and overall health and status date. So this is HTML, not as clean, but I have my overall status now that is updated every time I submit a status report. I have my status date. When was the last time I got a status report for this? And I could easily do where this is empty. I could do where this is more than 2 weeks old and the project is active. Really easy reporting now because I can just simply do that dot walk. And every time somebody submits one, it's immediately up to date. Okay, if you have any questions about this one, go ahead and submit them in the Q&A, but we're going to move on to the next use case. So again, we talked about, all we did was add a new field, add a business rule to the child table to let it update what I wanted to do, and then run a fixed script to set the data. And the business rule will keep it up to date. The next we're going to talk about, and in the interest of time, I won't walk through the demo, but the next is reporting on prefixes. Again, really common. I see it with stories, but I see it in lots of other places as well. And so one of the challenges we get is that we want to group by some tag that comes in. So I want to group by regression, or I want to group by fix now, something to that effect. And what I have is in all my incidents, I tell my front line to put that code into the short description, whether it's a problem or a story or a change. I put them in there, and then I'll do a starts with in my report. So give me all the incidents that start with this. That kind of works. Performance in a search is not necessarily great, and you can't do something like a pivot. I can't do a pivot, or I can't do an interactive filter, a standard interactive filter based off of that prefix, off of the string. And what I want to be able to do is I want to create a bar chart by giving me everything that has that code, right? That has tier 1 or tier 2 in the name. So what we're going to do, we'll talk about how we're going to solve it, but that's what I want to be able to do. Again, there's similar use cases, and a lot of times using short description, something in that short description. This solution works if we can programmatically detect the name from the group. That being said, it's not the best solution. Really, what we want to do is have some other improvements that we could be done would be on the table itself, to set a field where I have a new choice list or a new reference field where I can set it. I don't have to have the user type in a naming convention and spell it right and get the spaces right and is it a colon or a dash, but simply select it. Now I can have what we can do is have a business rule that looks at the string you typed in, and if you changed it, to set that, but allow them to overwrite it. By making it mandatory though, like yes regression, yes or no, I can do my groupings, I can do my filters, but I can also make sure that the user makes a choice and they don't misspell regression. They don't put a dash instead of a colon, that they're making a very conscious effort to say, yes, this is, no, it's not. One of the other things I like to do, if I want to see that tag, is that I have them put in a normal short description, set the choice fields that I need them to set, and then create a display name that displays it that way. So it makes it really easy to see what's going on. Maybe use a field style, but I don't rely on them to type something in a certain way. That's always problematic. So the way we solve this one is similar to what we did before. We're going to create a new field. In this case, the example I had was looking at the group names where I was prefixing my group names with IT something or HR something, particularly as we expand past outside of ITSM into other areas. We'll see group names that seem the same, like IT frontline, HR frontline. What I want to have is just give me all the HR groups, assignment groups, give me all the IT assignment groups, give me all the security assignment groups. So I'm going to, in this case, we're on sys user group. Instead of looking, or we're going to look at the name, we're going to add a field, which is type. And I'm just going to use a choice list, which is going to be HR, SecOps, and IT. I'm going to add a business rule that when my short description changes, I reevaluate the short description to set that new choice list really simply. And then I'm going to run a fixed script. It's really important. I run a fixed script to set that field for all the existing data. So now I have a mechanism via the BR to set the choice list, to look at the text, parse the text for the same way that you would do manually, but it just sets that choice list. There's some options here again about whether I default it, whether I'll override if I change the short description. Should I change the choice list or not? I probably want to make that choice list mandatory when I create a new group. I don't care what you call it, but I want you to put it in the category of HR or IT or CSM. And it's up to you whether or not it can be in multiple or not. And I need to use a list. But you want to think about those things rather than using naming conventions. If it's something that's really important that we're going to want to report on, we're going to want filters on, we're going to want a breakdown by in PA, we want to create those fields. We don't want to just create fields for whatever, whenever, right? There's short or naming conventions can be okay in the short term. Tags are a great option as well in the short term. But if it is something I'm going to be reporting on, it is something I'm going to make business decisions on, then adding a field to set that is a very good option to look at. Okay, so this one, we're not creating a business rule on a child table because there is no child table. It's just simply creating the field and adding the business rule. In the previous one, we were doing it after because we were at the child table. This business rule is actually something that we would look at to do before. So before we actually write to the database, when we detect the short description is changing, we'll set that field. So we only have to do one update. Very efficient to do. And again, it makes it really easy to report on. But I did have to add a new field. Okay. And the last use case we want to talk about has to do with reporting on a list. This one comes up occasionally as well. Lists are remarkably difficult to report on. They are fine if you want to filter, although they are always doing a contains, so they're very hard to tune. They're useful, they're really nice to display. So what I like to do is to create my list, make it really easy for a user to pick something, but then we're going to augment that with a child table so I can report on the child table, make my reporting really easy. So this applies to any time we use a list, which is not really common out of the box, but we do see people add custom fields that are lists. In the previous example, I might have an assignment group that is both SecOps and IT. So instead of having a choice list, I would do a list of those two choices. Watch lists are lists, but then we also see it a couple places in the platform. So any list, what I want to be able to do is to group by the list of the contents. So I want to be able to have a list, let's say it was SecOps and IT. I want to count that assignment group in both categories. I don't want SecOps as one group, IT as another group, and SecOps and IT as a third group. That's what happens by default if you group by the list. But I want to be able to just say SecOps 1, IT 1, right? It's double counting, but it's counting it correctly. And I can do a count distinct to kind of get rid of that as well. Or I want to do a bar chart based off the list contents. I want to see a bar chart based off of people in the watch list, what department people in the watch list are in. Okay, so that's what I want to see. Again, the group by watch list, the task skills. So on a task, I can associate skills, and I want to see how many incidents require what skills. I'm not looking for the unique combinations. I just want to know how many of my tasks required Java. How many of my tasks, how many incidents required JavaScript expertise, right? We'll count them multiple times, that's fine, but we want to be able to handle that. The way we handle this one, we're actually going to create a new table. We're going to create a new table. In the past two, we've created new fields on existing tables. Here we are creating a new table. So I'm going to have a table. It only has 2 columns. Besides the system columns, that I have 2 columns that I really care about. One is a reference to the main table. In this case, the example that we have is on the idea table from ITBM. There's a list of business capabilities. There's actually a few lists, but in this case, business capabilities. So I have a new table that references idea and references capability. It just sits right in between the idea table and capabilities. Then I'm going to add a business rule that sits on my idea table, the main driving table, the table that has the list. I add a business rule on that says when records are, when the watch list, when that list field is updated, add or remove records to the child table. Whether it's a child table or shadow table, I use the terms kind of interchangeably. Nobody edits the table directly. They edit the watch list because it's really easy. It's on that form. But under the covers, we are adding or removing records into that child table. And again, really importantly here, we're going to run a fix script to iterate over everything in the main table to populate that child table. Once I have this, what this lets me do is report on the child table. So I can report on the child table, walk up to the main table, and I can group by, I can run interactive filters, whatever I need to do, but I'm going to report on that child table, walked up to the main table to get everything I want to get to easily. If I need it, I do that. And if I don't, most of my normal reporting is unchanged. It's just for the use case where I do want to see what skills my tasks are requiring, where I want to see which business capabilities, which ideas correspond to which business capabilities. And I want to group by that. And I want to walk up through my business capabilities. And I want to get a count of ideas based off of the parent capability. You can't do that in a watch list. You can't walk through a watch list. This allows me to walk through it. And this allows me to do all my groupings, all my interactive filters really easily. Really small business rule to go through. And again, we run that fix script. So wrapping up through these examples, a couple of things that we want to do, a couple other places where we see this come through are things like the last updated by customer, last updated by fulfiller. People say, I want to see the last updated, but I don't know who updated it. So I might add a field that says, what was the last time the customer updated this field, right? I don't care about internally, I care about the customer. Or inversely, when was the last time our fulfillers updated this record? So if I just look at last updated, I might be missing that a customer is going in every morning going, what's the latest status? Every morning, what's the latest status? Every morning, what's the latest status? But we're never replying back, right? So it's being updated, that's good, right? But it's not. So I'll add a field that says, when was the last updated by fulfiller? And then I add so I'll add that time. I might just add a Boolean that says the last update was the fulfiller or not, right? Because whenever the fulfiller wasn't the last one, we want to make sure we reply back to the customer. And going through that, I add a simple business rule to this that just says who updated it, and whoever updated it, can I detect that that's the customer? Was it the caller or was it the assigned to? And then you have to decide if it's not one of those 2 people, which category do you fulfill? But again, now I can report on it, not just the last updated incidents, but the last time, when was the last time we updated? It was a non-customer updated. Sys updated on gets updated regardless who updated it. We want to be a little bit smarter for our process. Child task summary is really common on my problems, on my problem tasks. I keep a running counter of open, closed, and total incidents, open tasks. So I can just say, give me all the tasks. With a related list, I can say, give me all the tasks that are open, but by keeping that summary, we can do some things really easily, or we can chart how many open tasks there are, how many closed tasks there are. And then hierarchy. Hierarchy is one that works really well with PA scripts, so we can get rid of some PA scripts, where I might do a location hierarchy, so that if I'm in a city, I have the city, the region, city, the county, the state, the region, the country, all of that rolled up in a list, which allows me to quickly see that information, quickly see that roll up, but also break down by that entire list. So I don't have to use a hierarchy script. I can just break down by that field. Same thing with user. I can materialize the whole management chain. So from me up to the CEO is all in one field. So it makes it really easy to say, give me everybody who works for the CIO. Give me everybody who works for this VP, because that VP's SysID is in every single record. So I can just do one contains and I will get the record I want. And then group is the same thing. Give me the whole group tree. Hopefully we're all using parent-child relationships in groups. That's really useful. It's really nice. But by materializing that onto sysuser group, again, I can say, give me all the child groups of X, regardless if you're a direct parent-child relationship or 8 levels down. I've materialized all of that. Really nice for PA, but also very useful for filtering and reporting on those reports. Okay. All right. So time-wise, we're not going to go into those details. I am going to write up the other 2 use cases. So you'll see those examples that'll probably get posted next week. But now we're going to get into some questions. We'll start with any questions about what we talked about today, but please submit whatever questions you want. We'll just start with the ones that came before.
Hey, Adam, thank you so much. All right, so there's one question already in the Q&A, and that's about your first example. And the question is the status report only available on the projects table?
I believe so the status report we looked at was project status, and I believe that is part of ITBM and only related to project. I have not seen status reports for something else, like for a change or a portfolio. It's a pretty simple table, so you certainly could probably build it yourself if you wanted to, if you needed it for something else. But I believe what we looked at is part of ITBM.
All right. So I have a question. So folks, feel free to use the Q&A and move your questions in there and type your questions. Until then, I have a question that, well, my mind, it might also be on the tip of the tongues of the folks. And the question is, what is a good practice to basically stop adding fields to a table, a related table, right? When would you say, okay, I know we want to do it for reporting, but this is getting crazy, where we now have 150 columns in my table. What's a good practice?
So I think the best consideration that I have is, am I really adding value? Is this used? I get really concerned, and we absolutely have seen cases where somebody has 150 fields that they've added on the task or an incident. And a lot of times what we see is they're very duplicate. That's it can introduce some technical problems and some indexing problems, but more importantly, you're exposing a process problem, right? That's where we want to come back to the process to go, why do we have incident category and incident category reporting and incident category CIO? Process-wise, logically, we want to reduce those things down so that we're hitting the most important things. And it's really similar to having an indicator explosion. It's really similar to having too many KPIs. We want to have global KPIs that are sliced and diced, right? Different departments certainly are going to have different ones, but inside of IT, why would I have 3 different types of categories, right? So those are the cases where we want to look at the process and understand, are we doing something different? Why are we doing this? And what we normally see is that it's because we're just talking, we have 2 things that are 90% the same. Can we get these 2 groups together and resolve those differences? So I am perfectly okay with when everybody asks for a new field, my default answer is no. Just no. That being said, when they come back, no, we really need it, and here's why, then I'm okay adding one, right? We shouldn't be afraid to add a new field, but we shouldn't just add fields to add fields. So it's important that you're going through every time to evaluate what is the business need and are all of our existing fields still used. One of the things that I want to...
How would you know?
Well, that's where it comes down to the process owner having some understanding of that. We certainly can search what reports are being built on, what we have interactive fields on, but I certainly rely on the process owner to understand what their process is, right? And somebody from the business side who can champion to go, yes, this field's here. Here's what we're going to do. That doesn't happen all the time, right? Sometimes with incident, it just goes Wild West. People add whatever they want to add. In terms of governance, we got to get a handle on that first so that we have somebody who can say, here's what we're going to do. Here's what our enablement says we should be using. Here's what our process is. All of that is incredibly important, right? That's why process was flagged as one of those 5 key fields or key inputs. So understanding your process is absolutely the first and most important thing we can do. And then we will modify the tool to adapt to our process. If we don't have a process and we just modify our tool whenever anybody asks, we won't end in a good place. And it doesn't matter what tool you have. It doesn't matter how you report, what analytics you run. They won't be good. They won't be useful for the business if we don't have a defined process and somebody or a team of people who own that process and can change it as needed.
Yeah, you might actually even say that if you don't have an objective for your metrics or your reports, then why are you using them, or why are you creating them?
Yes, I think that's just because we did before is not a good answer, but to understand, here is the KPI we're trying to support. We need this to support that KPI, and we're still using it. I often will, and we talked about the prefixes. I often start with the prefixes first, right? Let's make sure, let's go a couple weeks, let's go a month to make sure this is something that's usable, what the fields are. We added the first field in 5 minutes, even with the typo. The other exercises are about the same amount of time. We just don't have quite enough time today. It's easy to do, but that doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. So understanding your process, which field should go there, what the choices should be. Is it a one-to-one or one-to-many? Understanding all of that takes more time. But once you have that understanding, don't let the technical piece hold you back, right? The key thing I think from today is don't be afraid of the platform. Use the platform just like we would create a new service catalog item. Well, what's a new catalog item versus an old one? What's a new incident category versus an existing one? That same process we should look at for new fields, right? You have to know what you're trying to do, who's sponsoring it, and then once you've done that, it's very simple to do technically. Process-wise, that's the biggest risk that you're going to be exposed to.
Got it. So folks, don't be shy. If you have a question, please feel free to add it either through the Q&A. If you can't find that, use the chat or open up your microphone and just ask the question. Else we will basically end a little early unless you allow me and Adam to continue our little back and forth. Somebody raised a hand I saw. It's also allowed.
I think we have to unmute you. So if you want to raise your hand, we can do that. Again, the Q&A is open.
All right. There's someone, Robert. Robert, do you want to say something? We could allow you to talk, but I would need to choose which Robert because you have 2. So raise your hand again if you want to talk, Robert. We'll open up the mic. For else, if folks are not able to use Q&A, we would also like to know the answer, right? If you're able to not use the Zoom Q&A feature, I would also like to know so that we can see what's going on or fix it. All right, we'll maybe give you guys a couple of seconds while I'll give Adam maybe some final thoughts that he wants to make sure that we take away from this office hours today.
Yeah, I wanted to bring up one more thing, if I can figure out how to share this correctly.
Oh, you're on a roll. I just saw something flip back and forth.
Yeah, it was wrong. So I got to share the right thing. Okay, blank screen.
Blank screen. Yeah.
Okay. So we'll wrap up early, but a couple of important things until next time. So one, the community is there for you all the time. I'm super happy to see how many other people are posting, are getting their questions answered quickly. Makes me very happy when I see the right answer there before I wake up in the morning. But there's lots of expertise, whether it's from ServiceNow, from partners, from other customers. Leverage the community, post your questions. I always recommend posting screenshots if you can, even if you have to blur something out. It really saves a lot of back and forth. Between now and the next 2 weeks, the recordings from office hours are posted. You'll see recap pages for everything. If you go to the main event page where you registered for this originally, you'll see the upcoming topics, but you'll also see the recaps. The recaps have the link to the embedded video, which is also on YouTube, but it also has the deck. So we will post the decks for the last, I think we have last 4 or 5 months. You can pull down any of those. Also, we try to put in the links that we talked about. Also, the idea portal, we keep talking about this. If there's something that the system doesn't do that you think it should do, that you'd like it to do, please post that in the idea portal. Even if you don't, you have a couple minutes, go look at the idea portal for dashboarding, performance analytics, or CSM, or whatever ServiceNow has for you that you're using. Go in, vote the ideas that you like. This is a direct line into the future for us for performance analytics and reporting, but also for the rest of the platform. The product managers are looking at this. And even if there's something that you thought should be there for 3 years and we haven't seen it, the ideas allow us to really understand what the customer appetite is. There are certain things that somebody just wants and maybe they happen, maybe they don't. But if there's something that a lot of people ask for, then of course we're going to respond to that. So please use the idea portal, submit your new ideas, vote for what's there. And then I will make a plug for Knowledge 20. So coming up May 3rd through 7th, I think. First week of May in Orlando. Knowledge 20 is coming up. There are some great customer presentations scheduled. I love hearing what you guys are doing. So hopefully you can come and listen to those. Those are not recorded. They're not posted. So the only place to hear what other people are doing is at Knowledge. There are also, we have some labs coming in. So we have 9 PA and reporting labs updated from last year. Even if you've gone before, we have updated those. There's also 3 CreatorCon labs. And I wanted to point that out for the people on the phone. The CreatorCon ones are about kind of advanced development for PA and reporting. We have one on scoped apps and building custom apps with analytics, one on custom interactive filters and custom visualizations, and then a third one, which is new, which is integrating analytics into the rest of the platform. So today we talked about modifying the platform to get it to work for you. But we have some new cases about how do I use PA in Flow Designer? How do I use PA? How do I use the results from PA in a UI policy? So really some interesting things, pushing the limits. So those labs are there, the 9 plus the 3. So there's really 12 labs to go through. If you go to Knowledge, you'll have access to those all year. So you don't actually have to go to them there, but really great content with some training opportunities. I love hearing those customer presentations. I love hearing you guys talk about the amazing things that you're doing that we never thought of. So a lot of great time to get inspired and get some ideas about how you can make your environment better.
Okay, thank you very much, Adam. And sorry for pounding my keyboard earlier.
Okay, well, it looks like I don't see any more questions. Oh, we do have one.
Is the integrating analytics into other areas of the platform a CreatorCon lab?
Yes. So the CreatorCon lab, I think it's 403, but if you'll search, the stuff's getting posted in the not too distant future. But it is a CreatorCon lab, and if you search for performance analytics and workflow, I think it'll come up. I think the number we gave it was PA 403 if you search for it. But we'll be going through a few exercises about how you can leverage PA and analytics in general through other places that we haven't seen it exposed, right? It's a lot more than just visualizations.
All right. Thank you, Adam. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day, good night, and see you again in 2 weeks.